Welcome into week 15 of the NFL season. This is Run the League. I'm your host, Grayson Grunhafer, and it is playoff time. I don't know about y'all, but I am really excited about this. It's a great time of the year, so let's make some waiver wire pickups today. We'll talk some stardom, sit-em tomorrow, and of course, the Fantasy Football Show on Thursday as well. But without further ado, let's do this. All right, everyone, welcome into Run the League. Of course, we're doing waiver wire pickups today, and I have some decent suggestions this week. It's an okay week on the waiver wire. I know everyone's really excited. It's playoff time. It's time to make that final push. It's time to, go out, get some upset victories over the top seed, or if you are a top seed, maybe enjoy a bye week and then play in the semifinals. But this is going to be a very important week for everyone with the waiver wire as you're trying to, potentially set yourself up to have success in the playoffs. So let's start with the quarterback position. My top streamers this week, I'm going to keep naming this guy until his roster percentage gets to the point where I think it should be, which it should be in the 90%, maybe even higher than that. But that's Taysom Hill, quarterback for the New Orleans Saints. He has been on a tear. He's been inside the top 5 each of the last 2 weeks, despite not really playing very well. It just doesn't matter because his rushing floor is so high. He gives you great production every week. They have a tough schedule going forward, the Saints do, but I still think it just is one of those things where Taysom Hill's running ability is just going to allow him to have a lot of fantasy success. So if he is out there, you need to go pick him up. I don't even care if you have a top quarterback like Patrick Mahomes out there. Taysom Hill needs to be on your roster. So he's my top fantasy waiver wire pickup at the quarterback position this week. A couple other guys that are good streaming options. Tua, he takes on the Jets this week. The Dolphins quarterback has been really solid. I just think he gives you a safe floor. He'll probably get you 15 points, put you right inside that range of 12 to 15, and you don't really have to worry about much. There's some upside there, but he hasn't shown that a ton. I just think his floor is what you're going for. I also really like Jimmy G taking on the Falcons this week. Great matchup. There's a chance the touchdowns fall in his direction, and maybe he throws 3 or 4 touchdowns. You know they're going to run the football, but who knows? Maybe Jimmy G cashes in the red zone and gives you another pretty good week. And then the final one is Big Ben, who has been really good in 3 of the last 4 weeks. He's been a top 12 quarterback. They take on the Titans this week. Stands within reason that he could have another really good week. So those are some good streaming options if you're struggling at the quarterback position or if you want to maybe take a step in another direction. Moving on to the running back position, probably the top waiver wire pickup of the week is going to be Rashad Penny, the running back for the Seattle Seahawks. He had 16 carries for 137 yards and 2 touchdowns this week. I just think that, when the waiver wire is like this, you have to go pick up guys who could just maybe turn into a league-winning guy, and he could do that. His snap share and things like that don't look great. I don't look at him and say, man, he's going to be a top 5 running back because of his talent or because of his situation. But I think the production is there to say, oh, he could be an RB2 rest of season and maybe really help your fantasy team throughout the rest of the season. So I like Penny as a pickup this week as a guy who could take over that backfield. I also like Jeff Wilson, the running back for the 49ers. I mean, he had 13 carries for 56 yards. It wasn't great. Deebo Samuel continues to take carries away from the running backs there. My, overall question with him is, if Elijah Mitchell misses another week, is Jeff Wilson eventually going to fall into the end zone a couple times? And that's what you're kind of looking for. So that's why he's a good pickup. Be sure to check on Elijah Mitchell, see his status. I don't know if he's practiced today, but what I do know is the injury that he had, the concussion, the knee injury, it could be a 2-week injury. In that case, Jeff Wilson is a fine start and a decent replacement. 2 other guys to keep an eye on, Justin Jackson and Joshua Kelly. We know Austin Eckler's dealing with an ankle injury, so if he misses substantial time, both of those guys could have some value. Just keep an eye on them, especially in deeper formats. And the final one is Malcolm Brown, the running back for the Miami Dolphins. We know Phillip Lindsay's probably going to miss this week. Myles Gaskin might have to miss another week. In that situation, Malcolm Brown might honestly have a role in that offense and might take over the backfield, at least for this week. Moving on to the wide receiver position, I actually have 3 names that I kind of like going forward. And it's interesting because I think all 3 should be rostered already, but they're not. The first one's KJ Osborne. I told everyone to pick him up last week because of Adam Thielen's injury, and here we go. He had a great week last week, 18 fantasy PPR points, caught the bomb, but also had 9 targets. It's just a guy who I think is going to get a ton of targets as long as Thielen is out. And in that situation, he's a great fantasy pickup. So I really like him. He's my top wide receiver pickup of the week. I also really like Amon-Ra St. Brown. 2 straight games with 12 targets. He's had 15 points and 24 points in the last 2 games in PPR scoring. So he's been very valuable. I don't know if it's sustainable, but what I do know is that when you have a guy that gets these kind of targets, he's a guy worth adding. And the final one's Rashad Bateman, the rookie wide receiver, had 7 catches for 103 yards. But I think the more interesting part about Rashad Bateman is that when Huntley came in for Lamar Jackson, that's when Bateman had all of his production. So I guess the question is, will Tyler Huntley or will Lamar Jackson be the starting quarterback next week? If the answer is Huntley, Rashad Bateman might be his top target on the week on a weekly basis, and that makes him extremely valuable. Moving on to the tight end position, there's 2 names here. Tyler Conklin, the tight end for the Minnesota Vikings. He had a rough week last week, and it was tough to see because they did have to throw the ball quite a bit. It just felt like it was all set up for him, and it did not happen with Thielen out. But if Thielen is out again, I still think Conklin is a guy that you'd want to add. I just think he's proven that he can catch some deep balls and make some explosive plays in that offense. The other tight end to talk about is definitely Austin Hooper. He takes on the Raiders this week. His biggest question is, are Harrison Bryant and David Njoku out? If they are out, then Hooper is definitely a start this week as a low-end tight end 1. If they're back, well, then Hooper goes back to irrelevancy most likely. So that's the tight end spot. Moving on to defensive streamers. So I'm going to give you a team that is owned in a lot of leagues, but I don't know if they are out there in your league, you should add them. That's the Miami Dolphins. They take on the New York Jets this week. They're probably going to be the top defense on the week, according to most people. So definitely scoop up the Dolphins if you can. But a team that's kind of rostered a little bit less that I think is a sneaky good play as far as defense goes, that's the Eagles taking on the Washington football team. We know Taylor Heineke's dealing with an injury. Terry McLaurin might not play. That offense just really looked inept against the Dallas Cowboys this past week. I think the Eagles can do similar things, which will definitely make things very appealing fantasy-wise for the Philadelphia Eagles. So that's pretty much it on the waiver wire. Those are the ads this week. Those are the guys to pay attention to. Again, if you have some roster spots available, or if you have guys who aren't producing, now is the time to shift. Now is the time to shift to someone who might be more productive and might help you win games instead of a guy like a Marvin Jones who has just been sitting on your bench all season long. I know you're waiting for the breakout, but it just might not happen, and you might want to pivot to one of these other options. So that's the waiver wire episode. Of course, don't forget, tomorrow we will have Stardom Situm and the Fantasy Football Show on Thursday. But this has been Run the League on NFL on 365 Sports.